Yeah, good afternoon all, and I hope everybody had a good lunch. But I think something keeps us all awake, and it's going to keep us more awake, is ITC. And I think the moment we start discussing whether we are taking the right input tax credit or not, or what are the challenges we are going to face onto it, so that has been kind of a major challenge for all of us. And I would request each of the panelists to just take first, I think, a minute or so and answer the first question is what are the challenges they are facing in taking the correct input tax credit, and how do you go about it? And I think we have Tata Motors and we have Tata Motors suppliers as well in the panel to an extent. So I can will have both sides of the story onto it. And I think I'll start with Sanjay. Like you can, yeah, sure.
I hope I am audible.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, sure, Niraj. So basically, I would, give my reply in two buckets. When you talk about input tax credits, there are challenges in terms of the legal side. There are challenges in terms of the system side. One example from the legal side I would like to quote is about the blocked credit. So when the GST was being implemented, we were all very hopeful that it will be a seamless flow of credit. There will be no block credit concept. But unfortunately, we have that currently in law. And to some personal expenses can be understood, but some business expenses like gifts, samples, I don't know why government does not want to give credit on those items, which is purely business expenditure in nature.
I think there even analysis says it is negligible. If you take the pharma out of it, for everybody else, it's kind of near to zero.
Sir, the B2C entities, they have sizable amount of expenditure while they give gift during, especially in the festive seasons. They announce a lot of schemes during the festive seasons like gold coins, TV, refrigerators. Amounts are sizable. Believe me, some cases these are pinching to the business. Second, as I said, I'll give my answer in two pieces. Second is a system piece. System, there are a lot of challenges. So one, I would like to cite an example, not directly related to input tax credit for the taxpayer per se, but somehow related to your tax expense. So when you give any post-sale discount, right? So there is a condition under section 15(3)(b) that your customer should reverse the corresponding input tax credit. Originally, when the GST was implemented, the system was being conceptualized. The idea was that when you raise a credit note, the customer will recognize your credit note and basis that the officer can find out whether he has reversed the input tax credit or not. Currently, that system is not in place. So what next? Either you have to take declaration or at the best you can take a CA certificate. But unfortunately, our recent experience is that we submitted CA certificate to the authorities and those were not accepted. They denied that claim and eventually we are ending up paying the taxes. So these kind of challenges we are facing. So,
Yeah.
So very well said. I agree with that. There are some niche problem as well. So a few days back, I was discussing with one of my practitioner supporter that on FOC supplies whether we can take the credit or not. Few practitioners say you can, few say no, I say yes. Then at the end they suggested me a solution that it's not a big amount for you. So you take the credit, but don't utilize it unless your assessment is not completed. So those kind of suggestions come which are difficult to believe or accept sometimes and follow. And there are other practical problems as well, as mentioned that there are block credits. Apart from that, from system side, like 180 days payment issue is there. Reconciliation topic, the topic most talked about here as well in this conference. So these are the issues. And then if you make any kind of a mistake, and the assessment is coming after 3 years, and you forget about it, you don't have any control on that, then what to do? So litigation matters. So yes, it's a pain.
A very interesting conversation I had with a very large government organization, and what they asked us that they want a feature by which they can always keep a certain amount of credit as reserved, and it should never be utilized. So they want to ensure that any such gray areas come in, they have something reserved and they will not face any penalties. So even government is not relying on government systems and utilizing the full credit. They also feel that there is ample amount of gray area. Yeah, Viral, something from.
I think ITC is one area, which is interesting, and I'm sure everyone will be able to contribute what challenges each one is facing. Few on the operational part, legal aspects, we know AR is always against the assessees, and yeah, for the litigation we are yet to face under the GST. But on the operational side, few cases that we face, maybe, which I would like to highlight is, often the credit which is there on account of GST paid on the bill of entries. Part of them are reported, part of them are not. And then you end up, replying to the notices. And ultimately, you face, you need to submit a lot of documents, and you need to face various notices which are asked on daily basis. Now I've seen a lot of DRC 01A also being issued if the credit is mismatched by more than 20% between what you take. Other area which I see is, the credits which are there as a supporting documents to your, the main invoice. To take specific example is the airline invoices. You have booked the transaction through the travel agents. Ultimately, the invoice is given by the airline company. Those are actually not getting accounted in your books, but ultimately the credit do get passed on to you. And that's where, the systems like what you have, on the OCR is all, which is helpful, where you can get your credits. But yeah, that is also a challenge, where the expense is less. Now then there is a call between whether you can afford to buy those systems or not, etc. Another area which is big, where similar issue is there in terms of clearing and forwarding agents. If you have a lot of imports, all the shipping line bills are being paid by the clearing and forwarding agents, and that those does not get accounted in your books. But yeah, I'm sure this kind of challenges will be resolved. Also in the morning, we saw some presentation where they said that there is an API which has got released, and through API you will be able to track all these credits. But yeah, as on date, those challenges stand, and we have to face, at least for the audit periods which are going on. Yeah.
I think, again, I'll thank Sanjeev and his team also for helping us, forcing us rather, to solve the shipping bill problem, because they got us kind of develop a piece of RPA by which the entire reconstruction of shipping bill happens using bots, and that is being used by all their clearing and forwarding agents. So that is helping in a much bigger way. So some solutions, and I would say very honestly, recreation of an invoice from multiple import documents and reconciling with IceGate and bringing it into a system and putting it into your SAPs is the most complex piece that one can kind of do. And they actually helped us to kind of do it. That is one thing. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Just one point, where you mentioned, in terms of keeping balance of those credits, that's often that I have kept a practice from 2017, wherever we had these challenges in terms of whether the credits will be eligible or not, keeping those credits available, and that benefited us at least for 17, 18 and 18, 19, where we were able to close certain litigation, where there was certain amount of credits which are disallowed. But since we had credits available, we didn't face any interest or penalty. And sometimes it's a call that you need to take, do you want to litigate it or just reverse this because the quantum is less. And it's kind of a win-win situation between you and the tax officer. So yeah, obviously, if there are certain areas where you feel that certain amount of credit is something which could be litigated, maybe keeping balance would help. Yeah.
I think we are all talking about tax insurance by keeping some credits into it. Yeah, Nipun, thoughts?
So I would say, I would like to add 3 points. The whole mindset of government has changed or has evolved over a period of 5-6 years. So when GST was introduced in 2017, we were focusing, initial 5 years, we were focusing on our own compliance, that how do we ensure that we are doing everything right. Now we have to play a role of dual compliant. Not only our own compliance, we also need to ensure that our vendors are fully compliant. Starting with getting a right invoice or GST compliant invoice, ensuring that the vendor files their GST R1 correctly, and now with introduction of 37A, you also need to ensure that they deposit the tax correctly. So the role has changed from doing only our own compliance. Now we need to ensure that our vendors are fully compliant. And that's where I think the solutions, the automated solutions or advanced technological solutions will play a big role.
And I think very interesting example is sitting over here in the panel. So I think Pankaj can go first and Sanjeev can kind of add to it how they have found a way of making vendor compliant. So I think very interesting solution onto that.
Yeah, sure. First of all, thanks for having me here. See, how I see this ITC thing is that there are two parts to it which I have been experiencing. One is how the business is structured, due to which the ITC problem is getting created. And second is the legal problem, which already Sandeep has covered. So let me talk about the business structure. So I come from an automotive sector, which is a B2B sector. And many a times I have to onboard a supplier which is recommended by a customer. And there is a lot of investment which happens into supplier in form of tooling and technological development. So we cannot duplicate the supplier. And most of the suppliers, sometimes they are from MSME sectors and they have their own working capital issues. So now, I mean, in a layman language, if the supplier is consistently non-compliant, you will change the supplier. But due to this business structure, it is not possible. So here what happens is that the finance has to play a very important role, because whenever a notice comes, it's only the finance department who is going to face the music. But the problem has been created by the business. So here it's very important that finance has to have continuous awareness session with all the relevant stakeholders in the company, especially the purchasing department, sourcing department, vendor development department, even at the customer end. So that, you know, when I have experienced that every quarter, my GST team meeting over here, hello. So we conduct awareness session every quarter online. And there we come to know that most of the suppliers are not even aware of the latest developments which are coming. Like rightly pointed out by Nipun, the advisory which has come on the advisory which has come on 37A. So most of the suppliers are not aware of it, due to which I am going to suffer. So the first part is that the business structure plays very important role. So there, I mean, most of us are CFOs or reporting to board. So we have to educate our board as well, that whenever they are deciding on any structure of transaction, they have to involve finance into it. Secondly, I'll come to the legal part of it. Now, most of the issues what we are discussing since morning are relating to the P&L. The credit which I will not be able to get, the transactions which are going into the P&L. But what about certain transactions which come in the balance sheet? Like, I'll give you one more example. Recently, we sold a leasehold right in Sanand to one of a Australian company. Now the issue that time was whether GST is applicable on this transaction or no. Because if you refer to the Schedule 2, the lease is covered into it. But if you go to Schedule 3 of the CGST Act, land is exempted. But now there are so many rulings which have come, you know, I mean, in fact, the very classic case is the Builders Association case of Navi Mumbai, which went into Bombay High Court. And the Bombay High Court gave a judgment that the transfer of leasehold rights on land is actually supply of services. Now the fun part is, this is a judgment which was given in GST, but exactly contradictory is into direct taxes. Because any gain or losses on this, and again there is a Supreme Court judgment onto it, in Poddar Cement's case against Union of India, where Supreme Court said that any gain or loss on a transfer, even though it is beneficial rights, the income is chargeable under income from house property. So in income tax, they are treating it as a property, but in GST is not a property. Now there is another challenge because we are talking about ITC. So I charge GST because we have to charge, because there are so many advance ruling also available where the advance ruling authority have said that you have to charge GST. But the problem is the buyer will not get credit of that ITC. So I sold a property worth 25 crores, and you can imagine 18% on that, and the person is not able to take the credit. And he is coming in India as an FDI, and you know, what kind of message does an investor get? When on the day one of his onboarding, he is not able to get the credit, even though he has not raised the first invoice. So this kind of challenges I see, and that's where the finance has to play a role while structuring the transaction.
The interesting point that came up, that Ahmedabad Municipal Corporation has stopped giving lease now to any, they were giving land as 19-year lease. Now they stopped it and they are going to sell it. So that's a kind of a ruling.
No, I mean, that has happened. And what one interesting thing is what has happened is that GST has issued notice on order.
Yes.
So government is issuing notice on government that you are not charging GST. And now they have started charging GST. So, I mean, that kind of anomaly is there on the legal part.
Santosh, like if you can add more on to how Tata Motors has solved through the ASN kind of a mechanism, how you have tried to make all the larger vendors credit coming in, means like I think 95-97% of credit coming in today is completely validated and it's coming in time. So you have no gray area onto it. So if you can just kind of share some light on it.
Sure. So basically, I think this piece was covered in the morning session also by Anil, while he was discussing about the Cygnet tool. So when he discussed that before entering into the ERP, how do you make sure that the validations are happened? We started this somewhere 2 years back when the e-invoicing provisions were introduced. So we saw an opportunity. So when a person, when he generates an e-invoice, his JSON file goes to the IRP portal, which is validated by the IRP portal, and through reverse integration, it comes back to the ERP of the supplier. That is the entire loop of the invoice. In that JSON file, all the information related to the invoice, like the price, tax, HSN code, place of supply related information, and the other pertinent informations are covered. So what we have done, that we have released an API, Tata Motors API. We have a portal for the vendor, we call it SRM. So our portal has released an API, which our supplier consumes, and through that API, that JSON file, duly validated JSON file of e-invoice, travels immediately to our SRM portal, validates the price, tax, and other information with our purchase order and other SAP details. And once the validation is complete, it gives the supplier invoice an ASN number, which is an advance shipment number. And it happens within a fraction of seconds. So the moment he will generate an e-invoice, it will get validated and come. So there is a coding done in the ERP of the supplier. Immediately that will trigger that API and it will come to my system, validate and come back. An ASN number gets generated. And supplier, whenever he has to supply with that ASN number, otherwise the GRN is not met. And we also give a QR code. We scan that QR code and entire GRN is automated. So that is how, and in case the validation doesn't happen, then it goes back to them and then they have to cancel it. They have to cancel the invoice. Or if it is delayed by say 24 hours, then they have to raise a credit note, whatever way they want to do it. But they have to raise a fresh invoice with proper details so that it matches with Tata Motors purchase order details. So that is how we have ensured. So as you rightly said, we have covered in terms of number of vendors approx 80%, but in value terms, it is now more than 96, 97%.
And so that's amazing. I would really kind of say it's amazing. So I consult many different organizations on how to kind of improve their tax setup or something. But a very interesting question was asked to me by a friend, where did you learn it from? And I said, I just listened to all my industry friends, and that is where I learned it from. And that is what has helped to consult others. So I think it's our shared experience which is kind of most important that helps. Coming to Vikas, like notices is a perennial issue and we are swamped with it. Let us be honest. Nobody kind of, maybe I still remember my note of 2016 or 17 and I still remember that I had said, I put it in black and white, that there will be so many notices coming in that the government will require maybe 3 times more tax officers to adjudicate onto it. But it was on a lighter note at that time. I was not really serious, but I had made a statement, I justified it to extent. Today it's a reality. And how are you coping with it, or what are the challenges? It's all 90% data problem, or even legal issues notices are coming? Yeah, majority it's only data.
Yeah, so first of all, I would like to also share some history of 2017. When first time GST was launched, one of our tax expert in my organization clearly mentioned that central excise took a lot of time to mature. I think it started in 1956. Till 2017, it was not completely matured. So he mentioned that whatever is the model tax law, that is going to completely change. You see in next 10 years, and it will take a long time to settle down. And that is exactly happening. That's why so many notices. And second, the nature of the notices. Once I got 2 notices for the same year, for the same organization with different values. Delivered in 2 different dates. I was shocked, what should I do? And both the values were wrong. So I thought, what should I do with that? I simply replied that the values given in both the notices are different. Kindly reconcile and send it back. And trust me, nothing came back to me for 2 years. So that was my first experience of GST notices. So when they were sending it without thinking. Now some reasonable notices are coming where you need to act on that. And the most worst part I see, e-way bill reconciliation, as mentioned by sir in the previous session. So when they talk about reconcile your e-way bill with your invoices, I find it difficult to do that. But at the end of the day, what best we can do is, first of all, our system should be robust enough that we are capturing all the details. And then there has to be a dedicated team member who is working on this. And then based on that, whatever best reply we can furnish, we furnish. But yes, we struggle. We are still struggling. And second, let's say we have got 7 warehouses across pan-India level. So wherever we don't have a dedicated team, I have hired a practitioner so that he can approach to the tax officer and talk to them and say that, sir, this is not working properly, or take the help. So that's the only way I see.
I was with one of another kind of very large automakers, and I'm sharing few stories also onto that automaker. And they had 3 years audit coming in parallel, and 3 years audit together. And I was in Bombay with them. And he said, in all the 3 years, they've asked us to reconcile e-way bill data with GST1. We simply told them, please share us the data, we'll reconcile it, give it back to you. Because it's next to impossible to get and extract that much amount of data of 3 years from the NIC portal and reconcile. Means every day, ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा 1 महीने का data निकलेगा. There are multiple things. And on one side, all of us have been given a written notice that you will not scrap any of the GSTN or e-way bill or NIC websites. It's kind of, we have to comply for it. Without scrapping, it is impossible to extract this data out of NIC. It's a absolute problem. So yeah, just adding on to that on a lighter note. Viral, yeah, something from your side on the notices?
Yeah, we were used to notices even before, the challenges that we face now are not, so timeline of course is one of the challenge where, the expectations have changed. One is the nature of notice and the way it has been issued. One of the example was just shared. Second is the expectation of the tax officer, the GST officer, from the assessee in terms of, asking the data and the depth of data. And the third is, the revenue mindset, which always comes, and they have not had this mindset for 2-3 years because there was no notices which were issued. So sharing few examples, once the audit process, for 17, 18 and 18, 19 got closed, obviously the audit observations had been issued. And you would expect that, the DRC01A and DRC01 will be on the same lines. However, as I said, the way the notices are issued, we actually got DRC01A before even getting DRC01A, and that notice was completely different than what was there in the audit observation. The challenge was to see, from where the data has been picked up from the GST officer. We tried to find out, there were even those disallowances which were asked to be reversed, for which we have not even had taken the credit. So we said, from where this data is coming out, and ultimately then we found out that this person has just downloaded the data from 2A, filtered on the HSN code, and asked us to disallow, the ITC credit. And then on the next day, we are getting DRC01A for the same year. So ultimately, obviously, this is not tenable in the law, and that will be at the end dropped. But to say, you end up replying to those notices and also defending those notices, because there are instances where, tax officer have gone and made those kind of disallowance. So the nature, I would say, how the haphazard way of issuing notices, even though it's an online system. The other part was in terms of expectation. In 2017-18, we never prepared the ITC register giving item description, P&L heads, HSN code-wise summary, etc. But the expectation from the tax officer is that you give each and every detail at a product description level, and then they don't want to give timeline. So I would say, the expectations have also changed in terms of the notices that have been issued. And so we need systems now that we are able to reply it in a better way. But yeah, need to tackle to the past years. And the third part was in terms of, the revenue mindset. What we have seen, even though whatever you reply, DRC01A will be followed in DRC01, and ultimately, the order will be issued saying that, we are just replicating it. So it's no point, beyond a certain point going and, just, it will have to go at the appeals level and, need to litigate it.
I think it's going to be swamped with the appeals and swamped with litigation, which is going to happen. And see, this is, I have been requesting since last couple of years, and now maybe up till now industry was not taking it seriously. And I will again request everybody in the audience over here, start preparing state-wise P&L, because it's going to be the biggest pain for you. And the larger the organization, much more painful it is going to be there. And there is no shortcut to it. Let me be honest, there is no magic wand, there is no shortcut to it. And it requires substantial amount of process change or a kind of a process awareness, I would put it across. So that is what is required, and sooner you start onto it, the better it is, because there is no other way out of it. Yeah, Nipun, anything on notices?
Yeah, I tend to agree with Viral in terms of revenue mindset. I just want to share one live example in our case. So last year there was a Supreme Court decision in Northern Operating where on secondment you were required to pay GST under reverse charge mechanism. We received the inquiry investigation from DGGI Hyderabad, and the investigation proceedings were completed in a time-bound manner, and we received the show cause notice within 30th September. On similar matter, we received another DGGI notice after 30th September, which was beyond the timeline. We clarified to them that proceedings have already been closed, and it was on a pan-India basis. But in spite of that, they still want us to submit all the documentation, all the information again. So it creates a bit of frustration in the mindset of taxpayers, that why once the proceedings have been concluded, notice has been issued, why again you want to call for similar information. So that's just one example which clearly shows that mindset. Secondly, we also want to talk about in terms of notices. So how do you keep a track of such notices? You get so many notices. For us, we almost have 30 live audits at any given point of time because we operate in a pan-India operations. So I think that's one of the good practice which every organization should have, to to have a robust mechanism of tracking the notices, whether you receive a notice on a particular date or any particular point of time. And last but not the least is basically to have a clear understanding of the legal process, how to respond to such show cause notices. Like Viral mentioned that they received DRC 01 before DRC 01A. You should know that that's something which is not legally correct. So once you have full understanding of that process, I think you should be in a better position to challenge such notices for a better efficient solution.
I think, and 2 pointers to you, and means like we have so many notice management solutions into the market. Not a single one is able to suffice what the load and the kind of complexity is coming. That is a reality. So, and interestingly, when I just rushed out before the lunch period, got a call from one of the largest organization in the country, and they said, send your people, we need to do something about this. And we need a solution. They said, okay, we'll work onto it, and I had to take a half an hour call with them. But again, going back to technology, and this is kind of looking to the time, we'll keep some time for the audience questions as well. We always expected when GST started that our conventional ERP systems will be more than happy to take care of all the challenges. At that time, before COVID, we were not so digitized. I will put it across. COVID has brought us to be highly digitized as a global phenomenon. E-commerce sales was never a kind of part of our normal business practices, kind of transaction level of e-commerce sale was not there. That also has now come in. So we have multiple different sources of invoicing. We have multiple different sources of data coming in. So many companies I talk to have 3344 and specifically multinationals, because who have gone on a kind of acquisition mode will have multiple different ERPs as well. So is actually, even we are talking about AI, even it will kind of literally replicate humans, and that is the breakthrough because of which the entire ChatGPT saga happened over the last week or 10 days. And they have got a breakthrough which is far ahead of its time schedule. So that is what the saga was all about. But do you feel that technology is not coping with changing times? Or I will put it across in a different way. The organizational mindset is not equipped or is not moving fast enough to adapt those technology change. And I'll start with Santosh, and like we'll have everybody kind of give a quick 30-second thoughts around it.
I'll quickly summarize Tata Motors' position. So in our case, Niraj, the volumes are so high that if you don't do the automation and digitization, currently when you have to report at transaction level, it is inhumane to do the task. But yes, at a mid-size level company or a small organizations, the side of the tables have turned. During the central excise era, the corporate used to be ahead in terms of technology and the government were very, lagging behind. But nowadays you see the kind of automation and the kind of thought process the government has in terms of technology, the kind of facilities they are introducing, they are actually ahead of the most of the mid-sized firms, and they have to catch up. If they don't catch up, definitely there will be a value loss in the chain and the business has to suffer. So that is how I would like to summarize this.
I think Vikas will, yeah.
Yep.
Yes, please.
So, very well said. Just to add to it, they are ahead than corporate, but somehow government is also taking a route of central excise only. Somehow they are copy-pasting central excise into GST by way of saying that invoice cannot be revised after 24 hours. Earlier we had to report within 24 hours. Same way blocking the credit, rent a cab and all that. Same way now putting the burden on the SSC when they are taking the input credit that you need to reconcile 2B. That's the responsibility on me for my vendor also. So they are ahead, but they are also going in the old-fashioned way. And that makes it more difficult to handle. And somehow if I talk about my organization, we are a 1,000 crore company. And we are also looking for some kind of automation because it has become difficult for us. First, very well said that we have to have state-wise P&L. We are struggling with that. And number two, for the reconciliation part, we have to have something so that which can support us. So we are also taking certain supports from companies like mentioned here. So that's really helpful. We have to do that.
Yes.
To add one point here. So why I said they're very ahead in the game, because I've been visiting the GST offices, and I tell you, all these notices what you get from your local officer is not generated by them. You know, there is a central team sitting in Delhi. They are doing the taxpayer voice analysis, and they are very technically advanced people. They are the TCS guy, they are the Wipro people, sitting there, very senior engineers, applying their mind that how and what kind of reconciliations we can do so that the leakage in the system can be caught. And that is how we are getting the notices. And that is where I'm coming from, that they are really very, you know, advanced in terms of thinking. And if the companies are not, you know, responding with the equal thought process, then definitely there will be some issues.
And I think very soon you will see IceGate completely integrated. You will see FASTag completely integrated. You will see ITR data also kind of integrated to an extent. So all these things integrations will happening because statutorily everything has been approved. So once you see this integration, you will have so many cross-reference notices. We are just going to get crazy. The only point where I am still finding it a little bit challenging, and because I go through these notices in quite detail so many times, is that still it is being done by data scientists. Data scientist with a tax background is something, if that happens, it will be far more interesting story for all of us, and we will be into a far bigger challenge than what it is today. So right now the notices are coming from the data scientist, but not completely collaborated with a tax knowledge professional and a data scientist.
Agreed.
That is something which is, yeah, I think, well.
So, you know, being an MNC, I would say IT implementation or technology implementation is a need of an hour now for all of us to say. Looking at the other side, on the government side, we see that, you know, they have integrated their systems and they are very well advanced than the SSEs. The point which, you know, restricts us to move faster, I would say it's all technology implementation comes with a cost, and there is need to do a cost benefit analysis in terms of, you know, whether this could be of help to you, because there are a lot of products which are available in the market. On the other side, there is also a concern when someone looks from the global point of view in terms of the IT challenges, you know, data protection and other aspects to say. And that's where, you know, being an organization, you face one on the time perspective, the implementation challenges, and on the other side, also on the cost. Because that's something which is always a concern before you go on to, you know, doing a digitalization. And then the, you know, structure of your team, whether you want to go with a digital mindset and then, you know, you restructure your team, or you want to, you know, be with, you know, the same mindset and, you know, then do a slow and steady implementation. So I think it's a call depending on a situation that every organization will have to take. But of course, having digital mindset is the need of an hour and the future, I would say. Yeah.
I think, but just adding to one point of mine and Anil sir, is cost of being compliant more than cost of being non-compliant? That's the answer all of us needs to ask completely. Any quick questions from the audience? I'll take it, otherwise our time's up. So the board says here, time's up. So any quick question? Yeah. Yes, yes.
I do fully empathize with the experiences that were shared. One experience which I think all of us know still is that officers still ask for printouts and a lot of voluminous data. When you talked about the other side being Wipro, TCS or whatever, but it's not as evangelized as the IT department is, direct tax, where everything happens on the portal. You can just upload there. So my question is to you, sir, Niraj ji, is that, is it possible that leaders like you can influence the government to perhaps see this angle and, you know, create a similar portal like the IT portal and ensure that, much of this anomaly is reduced?
On his thought, especially West Bengal, they don't issue notices on the GST portal. They will send you a speed post, and they would want everything on the paper document and to carry to their offices. They will not even give you their mobile numbers or even the email IDs, and they would want everything on the paper. So I could understand.
Simple answer. GSTN portal, technology was established or developed in 2016-17. The income tax portal that you are today working is just a 2-year-old story. GSTN version 2.0 is on the way. Just wait for it.
Let me address this point in a different way. My experience with these notices is that getting notice is not a problem, but when we go into assessment, okay, so most of the officers, they are not adhering to the court judgments of other state. So when you are making this request and where it has to be made, that is a question, because Maharashtra Assessment Authority is not listening to the Chennai High Court case. For example, we have to reverse the GST if the supplier has not filed 3B. Now there is a very clear judgment by Chennai High Court which says that first of all, you go and recover the tax from the supplier, and then you go to the customer. But there is no mechanism to see what action the department has taken against the supplier. And every state, they are doing assessments through their earlier mindset of service tax and excise regime. So that's actually an anomaly.
And only kind of a request I will have with all of you is please make more and more representations through your associations, because that's a tip or a kind of a suggestion I will say that is being heard most by the government, and that more you do, kind of that would be better. I think the time's up and we have further kind of sessions and discussions planned out. So thank you so much for a very interesting conversation, and I think we did justice to the topics. So thanks a lot.